On Thanksgiving, my sister discovered I had $12 million and my family demanded I give the money to her, claiming she deserved it. Hello everyone. Before we start today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing viewers and subscribing is one of the best ways to help us. It's quick. Your support is free and allows us to continue bringing quality content to you. Your support is essential to us. Let's keep this channel running. Growing collectively, thank you so much. Now let's start the video using a throwaway account for obvious reasons, with some specific information modified to preserve anonymity. My name is Sarah. I'm a woman, I'm 38 years old and I need to vent. You know that family dynamic where one child is perfect and the other seems to be invisible? Yeah, welcome to my life. Everything was pretty typical until I was 8 years old. I was an only child and although my parents weren't particularly affectionate, they were present. I suppose my mom helped me with my homework and occasionally my dad would take me fishing at Lake St. Clair. We weren't the Brady Bunch but we were okay. Then came the night that would change everything. I remember my Aunt Kelly showing up at 2 in the morning and telling me to pack my bags because Mom was at the hospital, my sister Rachel was on her way, but something was wrong, she wasn't supposed to arrive for another 2 months. The following weeks were a whirlwind of hospital visits and hushed conversations. Rachel was so tiny she looked like one of my dolls, but with all those tubes and wires I couldn't touch her or get too close. It was the first time I felt it, an invisible wall forming between me and the rest of my family. When they finally brought Rachel home, our house transformed into a sterilized bubble. Mom became obsessed with germs. I'm talking industrial-level disinfection with hand sanitizing stations in every room and constant cleaning. The smell of bleach was so strong it still makes me uncomfortable to this day. But here's the part that really bothered me. Whenever I showed the slightest symptom of illness, I was rushed off to Grandma Marie's or Aunt Kelly's house. Every time you sneeze, pack your bags, light cough, you're going to see Grandma. At first, I thought Grandma Marie was fun. She made cookies and Aunt Kelly had a fantastic collection of Nancy Drew books that I was slowly reading through. But kids aren't dumb. After a while you start to understand what's really happening. You're not being sent on adventures, you're being treated like a threat, as if your very existence could harm your beloved sister. I tried everything to get their attention in a healthier way, honestly. I got straight A's, Mom barely looked up from Rachel's latest medical appointment calendar. First prize at the science fair with a project about renewable energy, my dad just asked if I could store the display board in the garage since Rachel is allergic to cardboard dust. Does that even exist? The real shock came when I was 12. I had been practicing for months for the school talent show, teaching myself to play Bridge Over Troubled Water on the piano. I know it's a bit too obvious. Rachel had a 99.1 degree Fahrenheit fever the night of the show. Guess who had nobody in the audience, while 2 weeks later the entire family, including paternal and maternal grandparents, attended Rachel's 15-minute flute recital which was essentially Rachel butchering hot cross buns. She immediately learned to use the system and by age 7 she had overcome any real health difficulties, but that didn't stop her from performing. Headache forces her to stay home from school feeling tired. Someone else? Guess who was supposed to do her chores worried about someone? My mom literally called the school to ask for deadline extensions. I started spending more and more time in my room immersed in books about art history and antiques. It's funny how life sometimes comes full circle. My room became my sanctuary, mainly because Rachel claimed to be allergic to my lavender air freshener, so it was the only place she refused to go. You know what really happened? When she faked being sick, part of me felt grateful because at least I'd have company at Grandma Marie's. Whenever someone asked about my day or was interested in what I was doing, it was Grandma. She sparked my interest in vintage jewelry. She had an incredible collection of costume jewelry that she let me organize and catalog. I suppose I should have considered that prophetic. The worst part wasn't even the obvious favoritism. It was how they rewrote history to justify their actions. Rachel just needs more attention because she had such a difficult start. Sarah has always been very independent. Sarah understands that her sister has special needs. I didn't understand. I was a child who didn't understand why having a good immune system made me less deserving of love. Looking back, I can see how those years shaped me. The persistent message that I was somehow unsafe or inconvenient to have around didn't just go away, but at least it taught me to be self-sufficient. When nobody's checking your homework or caring about your triumphs, you quickly learn to be your own cheerleader. High school, most people either loved it or hated it. I, on the other hand, saw it as a way out. While Rachel was loving the drama empire in middle school, I was laying the groundwork for my own escape and allowing myself to achieve. I won't say that nothing inspires achievement more than knowing that nobody will do it for you. Remember what I said? I spent hours organizing Grandma Marie's jewelry collection, which taught me a valuable lesson about the need for systematic organization and attention to detail. In high school, I approached everything with the same perspective. My desk at home looked like something out of an organizing magazine: color-coded notes, meticulously organized study plans, and everything in its proper place. Rachel teased me about it, calling me Rain Man. Very funny, friend, but you see, the thing about being invisible is that nobody is monitoring your failures or successes, so do what you want. I signed up for every club that didn't interfere with my part-time job at Carson's Diner. Thanks to Carol, the owner, for remembering my birthday when my own parents had forgotten. Debate team check. President of the National Honor Society check. Editor-in-chief of the school newspaper check. Debate team was where I really found my voice. There's something very satisfying about destroying someone's argument while maintaining complete composure. It also taught me to negotiate, something I didn't realize at the time but would be useful later. Rachel won the state championship twice. She had important soccer games, so my parents couldn't attend any of the competitions where the C team didn't even play the match. Junior year is when things got really interesting. I took the SAT and got a perfect score, not like, oh, very good, perfect. I mean perfect. Perfect, 1600. You know how many people get that? Less than 1%. I remember spending almost 20 minutes staring at the results screen, convinced it was a mistake. I ran home to tell my parents. Realized that was stupid. Mom was in the kitchen helping Rachel with her English homework. The conversation went something like this. My reaction: Mom, look, I got a perfect score on the SAT. Mom, that's nice, honey, but can you speak more quietly? Rachel is trying to concentrate, she has an important test tomorrow. Rachel, you're right. Yeah, some of us actually have to study, Miss Perfect. Rachel, don't worry, you just have a different learning style. I still have the printed copy of the SAT results somewhere. It was never posted on the fridge, but Rachel's C+ in English, that baby got prime space on the fridge with a "we're so proud of you" included. The college application process was interesting. I applied to 15 schools without telling anyone. I wrote all my own essays, gathered my own recommendation letters, and handled all the financial aid paperwork myself. My counselor, Mr. Chin, was the real hero. My parents were too busy to help me with the FAFSA, so I stayed late after class. And then the acceptance letters started arriving. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan, and each one came with a scholarship offer. I kept them all locked in a box under my bed, knowing what would happen if Rachel discovered them. They would suddenly shift the focus entirely to her, but if Sarah goes to Harvard, I'll be completely alone, or some nonsense like that. The day I received my full scholarship offer from UMich, Rachel made the sophomore cheerleading squad. Guess which one was celebrated with a family dinner? Hint: I had microwave mac and cheese in my room while they went to Olive Garden. But you know what? The scholarship was my golden ticket. Tuition, room and board included, as well as a book stipend. I could finally leave that house where I was invisible or a nuisance. The day I received my acceptance letter, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, a window seat on the 4th floor overlooking the park, and I mourned for an hour, not sad. There were tears of relief. When I told my parents at dinner that I was going to UMich, they were appalled. Michigan, but that's so far away. What if Rachel needs you? I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Rachel's cheerleading competitions are very expensive. Rachel was crying, "Oh my God, can I finally have your room? I need space for my TikTok videos." The summer before college, I worked double shifts at Carson's Diner to save money. Carol, poor thing, always gave me extra tips and made sure I took home leftover pie at the end of my shift. She also taught me a vital skill: how to recognize genuine people in a society full of fakes. Honey, she told me, in diners and in life, whoever makes the most noise usually has the least to say. Move-in day in Michigan, my parents couldn't attend because, surprise surprise, Rachel had a cheerleading competition. Aunt Kelly drove me and helped me organize everything in the dorm room and gave me an envelope with $500. "Your Grandma Marie wanted you to have this. She told me she's very proud of you." I later found out that Grandma had been saving that money from her Social Security benefits for months. That night in my dorm room, I promised myself I would create a life so wonderful that being ignored would be inconceivable, not out of revenge, nothing to prove to my family, but for the 8-year-old girl who used to be sent to Grandma's house for sneezing. College and the beginning of something new. College passed in a whirlwind of all-nighters, instant ramen, and heavenly independence. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan, not that my parents noticed. They were too busy helping Rachel transfer to her 3rd college in 2 years. But that's where the plot takes an unexpected turn. I got an entry-level job at the Everett and Phillips auction house in Detroit. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you work in the business, you probably know who I'm talking about. A genuinely high-quality establishment with many traditional and affluent clients. That's the kind of transaction. I started with their estate sale business, which involved documenting the belongings of wealthy individuals after their deaths. It wasn't exactly glamorous, but it paid well. My first few months were pretty normal. Breakthrough, registering countless sets of china, categorizing antique furniture and so on. Then came the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston was an elderly widow who passed away childless, leaving behind what everyone assumed was a huge collection of costume jewelry. Rooms full of material. This is where those hours with Grandma Marie proved useful. I'm examining when something catches my eye in this pile of jewelry, usually an Art Deco brooch, nothing too fancy yet. There was something different. The weight was inappropriate for costume jewelry, the clasp was too complex for an imitation, I believe. I spent my entire lunch hour that day researching antique jewelry makers' marks and ended up staying late at the office to use the company membership card that allowed me to access several antique jewelry databases. The more I researched, the more certain I was that this wasn't costume jewelry but real jewelry. If I were the new girl, nobody would believe me if I said we had a potential treasure on our hands. So I did what the debate team taught me. I prepared my case meticulously. I spent 2 weeks during lunch breaks and evenings learning everything I could about Art Deco jewelry authentication, even using some of my meager savings to pay for an online gemology course. I finally gathered the courage and approached my boss, Mr. Harrison, with a complete presentation that included comparative images, historical documentation, and everything. The conversation went something like this. My response was, "Sir, I think we may have something significant in the Kingston estate." Harrison, barely looking up from his phone, says, "Sarah, we've already cataloged them as costume pieces." "You're right, I know, but look at these makers' marks. They match perfectly with Cartier signatures from 1925. Harrison, finally paying attention. "Where did you learn all this?" That was my response. "I did research." Long story short, the costume brooch sold for $47,000 at auction. It turned out to be part of a limited collection created for a select group of Europeans in the 1920s. But here's the key point. Harrison started trusting me after that. He started giving me other artifacts to authenticate. Suddenly my useless hobby of sorting antique jewelry acquired real significance. I dedicated myself to learning everything I could about vintage jewelry. I took advantage of every opportunity. I took every online course I could afford, spent weekends at garage sales researching items, and even started a small notebook to document various authentication procedures. My apartment looked like a jewelry academic's fever dream, with walls covered with several printed copies of antique hallmark stamps and certification guidelines. The auction house started receiving important items that others had overlooked as a result. I discovered significant pieces, developed contacts with collectors, and got to know the market. My commission checks grew. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving and saving money. The family remains remarkably uninterested. Sunday dinners that I still attended like an idiot, the conversation went something like this. "Mom, Sarah, you're still at that antique shop, right?" "Me, it's an auction house." "And yes, actually I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece." Rachel interrupts. "Oh my God. Speaking of which, you guys need to see this charm bracelet I bought at the mall." But for the first time in my life, I didn't care anymore. I had discovered something that was completely mine, something I was really excellent at, something that had no relation to being Rachel's disappointing sister. The Rothschild collection, then came the Rothschild collection. That was about 2 years after I started working in the auction business. A huge traditional wealthy family, lots of buzz in the industry. I was part of the team cataloging the jewelry collection, and that's when I noticed it in a fairly mundane new Art Nouveau piece that everyone else had missed. I spent 3 days investigating it. Barely slept. It turned out to be a piece from a famous French jeweler's private collection, which was supposed to have been lost during World War II. When it sold at auction for $238,000, Harrison called me into his office. I believed I was getting promoted. Instead, he said something that completely changed the situation. "Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. I should be running my own authentication business." I shrugged at the thought of starting a business with money, but the more I saved, the more the idea took root. I started doing small freelance authentication projects in my spare time. Word spread that I had an incredible eye, and private collectors started contacting us directly. One night I was sitting in my modest apartment surrounded by jewelry manuals and authentication tools I'd been gradually accumulating when I had an epiphany. This is something I could really do. I could create anything on my own. So I did what any sensible person would do. I took on massive debt using my car as collateral. I emptied my savings account. I rented a small office in a less desirable area of the city. People thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. I transformed a warehouse above a Chinese restaurant that was approximately the size of a college dorm room. The rent was cheap because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken and the Wi-Fi only worked if you sat in the corner near the window, but it was mine. What a fight. The first few months were interesting, and by interesting I mean terrifying. I would wake up at 4 in the morning in a cold sweat calculating how many months until my savings ran out. Paying the loan installments was like a noose around my neck. My office furniture consisted of a card table I bought at a thrift store and a chair I literally found on the sidewalk. Don't worry, it was completely cleaned. However, in the world of luxury jewelry, reputation and contacts are everything, and my experience at the auction house gave me both. I started small, doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My fees were lower than the big organizations, but my attention to detail was becoming known. Word spread, and 6 months later, a decisive moment occurred. A dealer I had done business with at the auction house asked about a collection of Victorian brooches. The owner requested confirmation before the sale. It turned out to be a huge collection with pieces from 3 generations. I worked on it for 2 solid weeks, rarely sleeping, documenting everything I discovered about families, 2 extremely rare pieces that had been misinterpreted as later replicas. The owner was so delighted with my detailed analysis that she not only paid my fees but also offered me a 10% commission when the work sold. That commission? $86,000, more than I had earned in the previous 2 years combined. My phone rang off the hook. Private collectors had heard about my ability to find lost pieces, even estate lawyers seeking advice on inherited jewelry. My old auction house started sending me authentication work. I'm pretty sure Harrison was secretly helping spread the news. Thanks, boss. Let's expand. In the 2nd year, I hired my first employee, Jenny, a recent gemology graduate. She reminded me a lot of myself at that age. She was extremely intelligent but overlooked for being discreet. She's now my head of authentication and worth her weight in gold. The firm expanded faster than I could predict. We moved to a real office downtown. Goodbye Kung Pao chicken smell. I created a team of specialists and gained a reputation for finding lost objects in ways you can't imagine. So many important historical jewelry pieces are mistakenly interpreted as costume jewelry in attics, keeping them secret. For my family, however, success brought its own obstacles. The bigger we became, the harder it became to keep it secret from my family. They still thought I worked in an antique shop. Rachel made these sarcastic comments during family dinners. Rachel asked Sarah, "I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill, maybe your little shop would want it." I wanted it after authenticating a $1.2 million Faberge item that morning. "Sure, I'll take a look." Mom continues introducing me to everyone. "This is my other daughter who works with old jewelry or something." Meanwhile, happily, I was quoted in Forbes with my company name and we had recently built our 3rd office. The strange thing is that keeping the secret became almost enjoyable, like an inside joke I had with myself. I would sit at Sunday dinner in my cheap Target clothes, actually Chanel, listening to Rachel talk about her entry-level marketing job knowing I had just closed a deal for more than her annual salary. I even started playing little games with myself, like wearing authentic Harry Winston pieces to family gatherings and seeing if anyone noticed or not. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes showing off her expensive $200 Michael Kors watch while I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe that cost more than her car. Managing growth, however, the real challenge was managing growth. By the 5th year, we had established offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time on planes than in my own bed. We built a reputation for discretion. It turns out many wealthy people wanted their jewelry verified without the rest of the world knowing. The money was huge. For example, we needed to hire a large team of financial advisors. Despite this, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I bought a good house but an unassuming house in a desirable neighborhood. I drove a luxury but discreet car. The only place I really invested heavily was my home office with advanced authentication equipment, the most effective security system money can buy, a custom-made safe to create Fort Knox envy. What's the irony? They thought I was being frugal to help them. Mom used to comment things like, "How kind of Sarah to help, she must be eating only instant noodles to manage." I had just validated a collection that earned me a commission larger than their mortgage. You know what's strange about success? The more you have, the harder it is to explain it to others who have always seen you as inferior. It's like explaining colors to someone who only knows black and white. That person doesn't have the necessary context. By that time, my company was doing very well. We dominated the luxury jewelry authentication market in the Midwest and our reputation was pure gold, pun intended. But every Sunday I went to dinner at my parents' house playing Sarah, the modest antique shop employee. The cognitive dissonance was becoming ridiculous. I spent my mornings on conference calls with collectors from Dubai, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully chosen normal clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast while Rachel devoured the conversation with stories about her latest triumph in marketing, usually something like getting her boss's coffee without spilling it. The turning point. One particular Sunday stuck in my memory. I had just completed a huge deal authenticating a missing Cartier piece that had been stored in a vault for 40 years. Just enough for a 7-figure commission. I drove straight from the meeting to my parents' house, still euphoric about the successful authentication. She said, "Sarah dear, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn." "You know how it is, trying to save money," I said, wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater that I had purposely chosen for its discreet appearance. Rachel responded, "Well, if you had gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry." "Your father." "Rachel, be nice, not everyone can be as successful as you." I almost choked on my roast trying not to laugh. Anonymous transfers and monthly payments to my parents started around this time. Aunt Kelly informed me they were struggling to pay Rachel's student loans and medical bills. Mom casually commented that maybe they would have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the house where I grew up. So I started an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When questioned, I responded that I was contributing $1,000 living on rice and beans. Rachel imagined the rest came from Aunt Kelly or another family member. She, of course, claimed responsibility for inspiring family members to help. Watch Rachel while she spent my money. The money was helpful but also had unexpected consequences. My parents started treating me with a strange mixture of pity and condescending pride, as if I were some kind of noble person in a case of poverty, sacrificing everything to support the family. Rachel's spending became increasingly extravagant. I arrived for dinner with new expensive bags, claiming they were from outlets, but they weren't. I can recognize an authentic Gucci from 20 paces away. She started taking extravagant vacations and bragging on Instagram about her privileged life. I was pretty convinced she used my alimony money to shop, but I remained silent. The irony was simply wonderful. Then came the MBA drama. Then the college fund drama. Rachel revealed that she wants to go back to college for her MBA at another private university, of course. Only the best for the golden child. Mom contacted me in tears, explaining they couldn't afford it. I said maybe Rachel could take a look at state schools. There are great programs too. My mom, "Oh dear, you don't understand that your sister needs to maintain certain standards. But speaking of helping, can I increase my monthly contribution?" My contribution, which had lasted a few years, increased to $7,000 a month. My bills were unharmed, but witnessing them praising Rachel for taking initiative in her education while presuming I was living on ramen to help, that hurt a little. The real blow I was giving was a guest seminar at the same business school Rachel wanted to attend. My family didn't know this. I was personally invited to give a talk on luxury product authenticity and business growth, and I had to make up an excuse for not being able to attend Sunday dinner that week. It made my own achievement seem like a distinct life, like I was some kind of corporate superhero with a secret identity. During the day, I managed a multi-million-dollar authentication operation. At night, well, on Sunday nights I was just Sarah, the disappointing daughter who worked in an antique shop. The breaking point. Thanksgiving. The weight of the lie was getting heavier. Rachel made rude comments about my career on several occasions, and every time my mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle, whenever my dad suggested I get a real job, I believed I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect everything to fall apart so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. It started 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom was crying because of back pain. She had been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the idea of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 20 guests left her overwhelmed. I'd like to say I offered to help purely out of goodwill, but actually I got tired of pretending her dry turkey was appetizing. My response was, "Why don't I take care of the food this year? I can hire a catering service." She responded, "Oh honey, we can't afford that." My answer, "Don't worry about the cost, I've been saving." Mom worried, "You're not bringing home a lunatic, are you?" I coordinated everything with a high-end company I use for business meetings. They do an incredible job, the kind of food that makes you wonder why you bothered preparing it yourself. It cost more than my parents thought I earned in 2 months, but anyway, Thanksgiving morning arrived and I was feeling pretty good. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a big online auction in Hong Kong. A magnificent Art Nouveau necklace was for sale and I had a client interested in authenticating it if he won it. Lunch arrived on time and everything was properly prepared. Rachel, of course, had to respond. I asked if store-bought stuffing was really better than Sarah's, which is from her mom. "This is much better," said the girl who once set off the fire alarm while making toast. Mom apologized to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were enjoying the meal. Rachel shut up after tasting the Brussels sprouts with maple syrup glaze, which, by the way, cost more per plate than her weekly shopping budget. I left dinner and dessert to check my auction. It was getting interesting and I needed to be prepared in case my client won. So I set up my old laptop in the bedroom that Mom kept the same since high school. Meanwhile, Rachel's room had undergone 3 renovations. That's when everything went wrong. I had left my authentication program running with several tabs open displaying various accounts and current agreements. Rachel entered without knocking. Some things never change. She borrowed my phone charger, saw my laptop screen and realized this was her chance to finally expose how pathetic her older sister was. Rachel had a mocking smile. "Let's show everyone what Sarah is really capable of," she said. Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and entered the dining room. The big reveal. Imagine this. 20 people, including uncles, aunts, cousins and my parents, stuffed with gourmet turkey and half drunk on expensive wine that they mistook for Trader Joe's. Rachel's reaction time. Let's see what kind of important work Sarah is doing on Thanksgiving. She turned the laptop triumphantly, apparently intending to embarrass me with some small antique transactions she assumed I was doing. The room went completely silent, like you could hear the ticking of the chic clock I bought my mom for Christmas. She thought it was a replica. My screen showed the current account balance of $12.4 million, pending authentication contract, recent transaction of $485,000, quarterly value of $1.2 million from the Hong Kong auction company, earnings report, $4.2 million. Rachel's face went through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The last reaction was something between astonishment and nausea. She even staggered a little. Rachel whispering, she said, "This can't be right." "Rachel dear, what's wrong?" Rachel's voice cracking. She is rich. Sarah is rich." Chaos ensued if that was possible. The silence deepened even more than before. Mom started giggling, actually laughing. She said, "Don't be silly, Sarah works at that little antique shop." I stood up, carefully adjusting my basic cashmere sweater that cost more than their monthly mortgage. "Yes, actually, Mom, I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country and have for years. Those antique shop comments, I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little company you never asked about, it has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork because of the drink and Uncle started coughing terribly. Mom's laughter turned into something else. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up so fast that the chair fell over. Mom yelled, "You have millions and you let us go through difficulties?" Difficulty response. "I send you $7,000 every month," she responded. "While sitting at millions, your sister has student loans." So there it was, instead of congratulations, not that we're very proud, but rather outraged that I hadn't given them more money. Rachel started crying, to my surprise, sobbing about how she deserved to know and how I had betrayed the family. Dad joined me and I said, "How could you be so selfish? We are your parents, we raised you." That's when I lost my mind. Years of being ignored, years of contempt, years of being considered a family disappointment, everything overflowed. My response: "You raised me? You sent me to Grandma's house every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every accomplishment because Rachel might feel excluded. You never saved a penny for my college but took out loans for her private school. And now you're angry because I built something for myself." The following 5 minutes were chaotic. Mom was screaming about family obligations, Dad was yelling about ungrateful children, Rachel alternated between sobs and demanding questions about how much money I had. Meanwhile, the sophisticated catering staff tried to serve dessert, looking extremely uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop and my Hermes bag that my mom had previously praised as a beautiful replica, and as I was leaving behind me, I could hear my mom arguing about how to spend my money. Something about Rachel's MBA and a new car. As I drove home in my sensible car, a limited edition BMW, my cell phone started filling up with messages. The family group chat exploded and Rachel started posting on Facebook about relatives hiding wealth and selfish siblings. The aftermath. The days after Thanksgiving were like watching a cyclone hit the coast in slow motion, except the hurricane represented my family and the debris symbolized my sanity. Let's start with text messages within 1 hour of leaving dinner. My phone had 47 missed calls and over 200 messages. My mom followed this intriguing progression. 7:42 p.m., "How dare you abandon the family?" 8:15 p.m., we need to talk about this like adults. 9:15 p.m., your sister deserves a part of your success. 10:30 p.m., I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m., why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Rachel had become a true social media warrior. Rachel, on the other hand, had fully embraced social media. She wrote a huge rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister was hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comments section was insane, with distant cousins and former high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly forming strong opinions about my moral character. But this is what really caught my attention. Rachel posted this: "All those years I tried to help Sarah's career, giving her advice on how to get out of that little antique shop and progress in her career, and she was secretly rich. The betrayal hurt so much I almost threw my phone across the room. What was the only best career advice she ever gave me? Try selling jewelry on Etsy if you don't know the term flying monkeys. That's when toxic family members send other people to make you feel guilty. Aunt Susan, who maybe once every 3 years I saw, Uncle Bob calling to tell me family is everything, and I'm pretty sure he still believes I'm 12 years old. He sent me an email with a long lecture about the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, how did she get my number? She felt obligated to express her thoughts on family obligations. But the real fun started when they arrived at my workplace. I arrived Monday morning and found my mom, my dad and Rachel sitting in our reception area. They informed Jenny, my receptionist, that they had an appointment for authentication services. Rachel was clutching her Michael Kors bag as if it was actually worth something. The conversation went about as you'd expect. "Your mom? We've already discussed this as a family." I said, "Family discussion without the family member you're talking about?" Mom ignoring me, "We think it's fair that you create trust funds for everyone." Rachel responds, "I need at least $2 million to start my new life right." Dad said, "And your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking about a beach house in Florida." That's me. "You missed the part where I've been sending you $7,000 a month?" Rachel responds, "That's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us." You're thinking, I owe you for what exactly? Years of being ignored, the missed graduations, the constant comparisons. "Mom, don't be dramatic, Sarah. We gave you everything." My response: "No, I gave myself everything, and you know what? I ended it right there in my office lobby. I took out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account." Mom gasped as if I had slapped her. Rachel started her fake crying but stopped quickly when she realized it wasn't working. But things got worse. They refused to leave and I had to contact security. Seeing my 60-year-old mother being dragged out while screaming about ungrateful children was bizarre. Jenny asked me if I wanted to file a complaint. I said no, but I had their names put on the building's no-admit list. The harassment lasted for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email addresses. They even tried to contact me through my company's customer service. Finally, I needed to issue a formal cease and desist letter. Mom, threatening with harassment charges, played her last card. She called Grandma Marie. But here's the thing about Grandma Marie. She's wiser than all of them put together. How did she react? Good for Sarah. It was about time someone in this family did it on their own. Mom didn't speak to her for 2 months. After that, it's been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I moved to a new house with better security and changed all my numbers. And the company? We're better than ever. Turns out my family problems attracted several high-level clients who respected my caution in the circumstances. Rachel continues writing passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. According to what I heard, she's starting her own jewelry authentication company. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer wrote them an official letter detailing how harassment charges would affect their lives. They're now telling everyone that they never wanted my money anyway and that they're praying for my salvation. What's the best part? For the first time in my life I feel free. No more Sunday dinners full of nasty hints, no more belittling my accomplishments to spare their feelings, no more funding Rachel's program. My therapist believes I'm finally establishing healthy boundaries. I say I'm finally living authentically, and that's everything. That's my story, Reddit. Thank you for allowing me to share it. A special thanks to the catering company that sent me a Christmas card stating the Thanksgiving meal was the highlight of their year. Edit: responses to frequently asked questions. Yes, I'm still in therapy. No, I don't regret cutting ties. Yes, Grandma Marie is doing well and will come visit me next month to help me catalog a new collection. Just one more thing for Rachel. I know you're probably reading this, but that Cartier bracelet you're wearing in your most recent Instagram post is definitely fake. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, Subscribe and turn on the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real stories happening around you.